Stephen King doesn't just write stories. He writes about lives unraveling, choices breaking people, and quiet moments that echo for years. This isn't just a ranking, it's a descent into 10 of the most unforgettable Stephen King films ever made. Let's get into it. It was supposed to be a game, a quiet weekend to patch things up, but when the cuffs lock and the heart stops, you're trapped in silence, and the only way out is through blood and madness. Jesse and Gerald go to a quiet lake house to fix their marriage. He cuffs her to the bed. It's supposed to be part of a game, but before the key can be reached, Gerald drops dead from a heart attack. Jesse is trapped. No one knows she's there. No food, no water. Just the quiet sound of the wind and her mind starting to fracture. She begins seeing things. A shadowy figure stands in the corner, holding a bag of bones. He never speaks, he only watches. Her dead husband's voice mocks her. Childhood trauma she buried years ago claws its way to the surface. To escape, she does the unthinkable, slicing her wrist open to slide free from the cuff. She walks out of the house, soaked in blood, into a world that forgot her. Later, she finds the Shadow Man was real, a killer who broke into houses and took pieces of the dead. She stares him down in court and finally reclaims control over her life. This one's about a man who wakes from a coma with the power to see the future and the curse that comes with knowing what's coming. Johnny Smith was an ordinary school teacher until a car crash put him in a coma for 5 years. When he woke up, everything had changed. His job, his fiancée, his body. But the biggest change, now, when he touches someone, he sees visions of their future. At first, he tries to help. He saves a child from a fire, stops a killer, but each vision chips away at his peace. The more he sees, the more isolated he becomes. Then comes the worst one, a handshake with a rising politician, Greg Stilson. Johnny sees a future where Stilson becomes president and ends the world. Now he faces an impossible choice. Let the future unfold, or become a killer himself. Johnny, once a quiet man, becomes a tragic hero, dying to stop the future no one else can see coming. A gift that felt like hope becomes a death sentence. In this story, a strange fog traps a group of townspeople inside a grocery store, and something terrifying waits both inside and out. A strange mist rolls into town after a violent storm. People seek shelter in a grocery store, and then they start dying. There's something in the mist, tentacled creatures, insects the size of birds, monsters from another world. But inside the store, things get worse. Fear spreads faster than the fog. People panic. A woman named Mrs. Carmody claims it's the end times. She demands blood. The group turns on itself. They sacrifice a man. They believe it will stop the killing. But the mist doesn't care. David, a father, escapes with a few others, including his young son. They drive until they run out of gas. There's no way forward, no help, no hope. David uses his gun, 1 bullet for each of them. He saves his son for last. Then he steps out of the car, ready to die. But the mist clears. Soldiers arrive. The nightmare is over, and David falls to his knees, screaming, because he killed them all just minutes before they were saved. Here's the tale of a small town where children go missing, and a group of kids discover that something evil is living beneath the sewers, disguised as a clown. Every 27 years, the town of Derry, Maine becomes a hunting ground. Children go missing. People look the other way, and something ancient wakes up beneath the streets. It takes the form of a clown, Pennywise. But it's not just a clown. It's a thing that feeds on fear, twisting into whatever you're most afraid of. A group of kids, the Losers Club, start seeing visions. They're stalked, chased, and haunted. Each of them is wounded by loss, abuse, or loneliness. Pennywise feeds on those wounds. Together they fight back, not with weapons, but with belief. They believe they can hurt it, and that belief makes them strong. They drive Pennywise back into the sewers, but they know it isn't dead. They make a promise. If it ever returns, so will they. They walk away, changed, not just because they survived a monster, but because they faced what was killing them inside. This story takes us to death row in the 1930s, where a quiet man with a supernatural gift waits to die, while the guards begin to question everything they believe in. Paul Edgecombe worked death row at Cold Mountain Penitentiary. His job was to walk condemned men down the Green Mile, a stretch of floor that led to the electric chair. Then John Coffey arrived, a giant man accused of murdering 2 little girls. But Paul saw something different in him. Coffey was soft-spoken, kind, and somehow able to heal the sick with a touch of his hands. Paul and the other guards soon realized that John Coffey was no killer. He was a miracle, a gift. But the justice system didn't care. The execution date stayed. On the night of his death, Coffey didn't fight. He said he was tired of the pain in the world, tired of the cruelty. Paul cried as he flipped the switch. The miracle died, and nothing felt right again. Years later, Paul still remembered, still carried the weight. He lived far longer than he should have, cursed, he believed, by witnessing something holy and destroying it anyway. Now we meet a teenage girl, raised in fear by a fanatical mother and bullied at school, until her hidden powers explode on the worst night of her life. Carrie White was a shy teenage girl who never fit in. At home, her mother beat religion into her with fear and fire. At school, the other girls mocked her, especially when she had her first period in the locker room and didn't understand what was happening. But Carrie had something they didn't. She could move things with her mind. Doors slammed, lights flickered, and when she got angry, nothing could stop her. A boy named Tommy took her to prom as part of a cruel joke. They poured pig's blood on her in front of the entire school. At that moment, Carrie broke. She didn't scream, she didn't run. She shut the doors. She lit the gym on fire with her eyes. The screams turned to silence. No one escaped. The town watched as smoke rose from the school, and Carrie left a trail of death behind her. She went home to her mother, covered in blood. Her mother tried to kill her, said she was the devil's child. But Carrie turned her powers on the woman who raised her in fear. The house collapsed on top of them. Fire took them both. In this one, a famous author crashes his car and wakes up in the home of a fan, a woman who loves his books and will do anything to make him rewrite his ending. Paul Sheldon, a famous novelist, crashed his car during a snowstorm. He woke up in a bed with 2 broken legs and a woman named Annie Wilkes smiling down at him. She said she was his #1 fan. At first, Annie seemed kind. She gave him medicine, food, and a quiet place to heal. But soon, Paul realized he wasn't just her guest, he was her prisoner. Annie didn't like the ending of his last book. She wanted him to write a new one, just for her. And if he didn't? She shattered his legs with a sledgehammer. Each day Paul wrote to survive. He played along, all while planning escape. Annie's mood swung like blades, soft one minute, screaming the next. She killed without guilt. She watched Paul like a hawk. In the end, Paul fought back with fire and desperation. He burned the book she loved, tackled her to the ground, and crawled for freedom. Annie Wilkes was dead, but the nightmare lingered. Even after he healed, Paul couldn't shake her voice from his mind. This is a coming-of-age story about 4 boys who set off to find the body of a missing kid, but end up confronting fear, pain, and the end of innocence. In the summer of 1959, 4 boys, Gordy, Chris, Teddy, and Vern, set out on foot to find the body of a missing kid. They weren't heroes, they weren't ready, but they were curious and they wanted to matter. Each boy carried something heavier than a backpack. Gordy lived in the shadow of a dead brother. Chris was labeled a troublemaker, but he wanted more. Teddy was scarred by his abusive father. Vern just wanted to belong. They walked along the railroad tracks, telling stories, dodging leeches, and facing their fears. But what started as an adventure became something darker. They found the body, lifeless, alone, and rotting in the woods. And suddenly everything felt real. Another group of boys showed up, older, crueler, ready to take credit. But Chris stood up to them with a gun in his hand and pain in his voice. He didn't want to be the tough kid anymore. He wanted to do the right thing. The friends didn't stay close after that summer. Life pulled them apart. Some died young, some faded away. But that journey, that walk toward death and back, stayed with them forever. It was the last time they were truly innocent. Now, we head to an isolated hotel in the mountains, where a man takes a winter job with his wife and son, and slowly loses his mind to the evil buried inside the walls. Jack Torrance took a job as the winter caretaker of the Overlook Hotel. The place shut down during the snow season, buried in isolation. Jack brought his wife Wendy and his son Danny, hoping for peace, quiet, and a chance to write. But the Overlook wasn't empty. The hotel was alive with something twisted. It whispered to Jack. It fed on his weaknesses. Cabin fever turned to obsession. His son Danny had a gift, the shining. He could see things others couldn't, the past, the future, and the ghosts trapped in the hotel's walls. Jack's mind began to break. He saw visions of dead guests. He drank imaginary whiskey with spirits. Then, slowly, he turned on his family. The hotel wanted blood, and Jack was ready to give it. In the end, Wendy and Danny barely escaped. Jack froze to death in the maze outside, chasing a son who had already seen his end. The Overlook kept its secrets buried in snow, waiting for the next soul to feed on. And finally, we tell the story of a quiet banker sent to prison for a murder he didn't commit, and how he spent 2 decades patiently planning the most brilliant escape of all time. Andy Dufresne was sentenced to life for a murder he didn't commit. His wife and her lover were found dead, and all evidence pointed to him. Shawshank Prison became his world, a place where hope goes to die. Inside, Andy played the long game. He kept quiet. He made himself useful. He started doing taxes for guards and became valuable. But while they saw a quiet man behind bars, they didn't see the hole he was carving behind a poster, inch by inch, over 19 years. One stormy night, Andy slipped into that tunnel and crawled through hundreds of yards of sewage pipe to freedom. The warden, exposed for corruption and fraud, locked his door and ended his life with a single bullet. Andy mailed the prison's darkest secrets to the media and walked away clean. Years later, his friend Red was released on parole. He followed Andy's clues to a buried box beneath an old tree. Inside was a message. Freedom was waiting by the ocean. And that's where Red went, to begin life again. Not as a prisoner, but as a free man. And that wraps up our journey through the best Stephen King movies ever made, showing why his stories continue to haunt and inspire audiences around the world. From chilling horrors to emotional tales of survival, King's adaptations prove why he remains the master of storytelling. Which Stephen King movie is your favorite? Drop it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, give us a like, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the world of movies. Thanks for watching.